So right now, this page is rendering a hard-coded array of users. Instead, we would like to be able to go and fetch information from the server, right? And I know that Januzzi has a whole bunch of users in there, right? Let's go fetch them from the remote server. So let's see if we can do that. So we need to be able to programmatically generate this get with this URL, and presumably this is the data that we're going to receive, right? Okay. Yeah. So let's get all these folks, right, and let's print them out to the to the array. Right. So to do that, the assignment suggests that all communication with the server, all communication in the server should be encapsulated in a dedicated class, right? In a JavaScript dedicated class, and we're going to call it admin user service client. And in this class, we're going to implement all our programmatic access and interaction with the server, right? All those 5 CRUD operations that we did manually from Postman, we're going to implement them here programmatically using JavaScript. Okay, so let's do that. Let's create a brand new file called user service client. Now, because this file has a specific role in my application, right? Meaning the role is that it'll handle all server communication, right? I'm going to put all the files that implement this role. I'm going to put it under a dedicated directory, right? Because this file probably will be used across many different controllers. You know, different files will use this same service, right? So it's a good practice to put it in a in a centralized place, right? So let's create a directory here. Let's see, web app. We'll create a new directory and we'll call it services. And under there, we'll create a file called user service client.js. So new, the JavaScript, paste that, there it is. So in here, we're going to create this JavaScript class. So in JavaScript, in before ES6, to create a class in JavaScript, you just need you can just create a simple function, right? And the function, if you call it like a regular function, then it behaves like a regular function. It just executes and then it returns. Instead, if you use the name of the function and you prepend it with the keyword new, then the function is treated as a constructor, right? And it instantiates a brand new object, right, of that type, right? And that's exactly what we're going to do, right? We're going to instantiate this class. Here we're just binding a couple of functions, a couple of variables here. We're binding it to the instance. We're using the keyword this, right, to reference to bind these methods on the instance, right? And we're going to implement each one of these. So we'll do the first one. We'll create find all users, right? We'll create that the first one. So send a get request with a URL. Now there's a couple ways of implementing this, and we'll revisit some of these techniques a little later when we actually talk about RESTful services. For now, I'm going to implement it for you. There'll be a lot of hand waving and some behind the scenes magic. But I'm going to give you this implemented already. We'll come back to this a little later when we talk about RESTful services, how to implement on the server side, on the front end. For now, just follow along. So let's implement find all users. So find all users, it's going to go and fetch some information from a server. Yes, I want to generate an HTTP GET request to the server. So there's a couple of libraries that you can use for this. You can use certainly you can use jQuery's Ajax. You can use Axios. There's quite a bit of several libraries that allow you to do this. There is a function as part of the default JavaScript, which is called fetch. Right, fetch will do this for you. Fetch takes as argument a URL, right? And by default, what it'll do is that it'll generate programmatically an HTTP request, GET request to that URL. Okay, so we can use this URL. We'll say self URL, right? And that's going to generate the request. Let's see. Let's comment that out. Well, actually, no. Let me see. There it is, right? That's going to generate the URL request. So let's how can we invoke this? We can invoke this by calling find all users, right? And this will generate the HTTP request. Let's see if we can do that. So in users, I like to be able to instantiate user service client. To be able to do that, I first need to load the brand new JavaScript. So we'll load it like over here. We'll say script and source. It's go up one, down to services, and then down to user.service.client.js. Okay. Once we've loaded, we can now instantiate it in our controller. We can instantiate it maybe over here. We're going to say let user service new admin user client. There we go. Right. Once we have it, we could, for instance, in our main, we could fetch all the users. We'll call it maybe user service dot find all users. We can call that function. Yes. Right. All right. Let's see what happens. Let's see. In admin yada not defined. New admin using client. Did I not load it? No, it's still blah 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 uncut yada. Did I not load it? New admin user client HTML. I did load it. Did I put it in the wrong place? Services. Oh, service. Oh, I hate computers. They take everything so literally. Right, so let's refresh. Okay, so this time around, looks like it didn't complain. We can look at the network, and indeed notice that the request went out. Right, the request went out. We can look at this is the HTTP request that was made. We can see that it was indeed a GET. The server is responding, saying, okay, everything was successful, and the response that came back is the array that we would expect, right? What happened with my love message? No longer there. Oh man, nobody loves me. So we'd like to be able to use that array, right? That comes back from the server, and we'd like to be able to perhaps assign it to our array. Yes, right. What we could do is that our initial array has this hard coded, right? It's Alice and Bob. What I'd like to be able to do is replace this array with whatever's coming from the server. So let's do that. From the client, what this fetch does is that it returns what is called a promise, right? A promise is an object that allows you to. Well, what happens is that the JavaScript itself, right, can't hand the request, right, that would go out directly to the server. Well, that request might have a couple of issues, right? It might time out, right, and never come back, or it might there might be some issues with that request coming back, right? And the problem with JavaScript is that we only have one thread, right? JavaScript has only a single thread, and we can't risk, having this thread somehow block, right? Waiting for this request that might never happen that comes back from the server. So instead, these communications must be asynchronous, right? So what JavaScript does is that it asks the server, the browser. The browser can have many threads, right? And usually the browser opens up a whole bunch of threads, right? When it downloads images and JavaScript and CSS, and it's downloading all these things from the network, right? So what Fetch does is that it initiates, it requests the browser to use one of its threads to go fetch this for them, right? And then delegates this to the browser, and then it goes on to do something else. It doesn't wait for the browser to be done, right? It's not synchronous. It doesn't wait. It doesn't block. Instead, we need a mechanism that we can register for a callback and say, hey, once you're done, right, let me know, call me back, and let me know what happened with this request, right? So to do that, fetch returns an object with, yes. Where? I'm sorry? No, they're on the server, right? We were using Postman to communicate with the server, right? We were sending this request. Yes, I did. We earlier I had used create user to create several users, right? And then I retrieved them from find all users. I refreshed. Yes, and these are all the users. Dan and okay, right? And I have all these these users that I had inserted earlier. Okay. Right, so we use the create we posted. So for instance, Frank Herbert, is Frank Herbert still there? Like Frank Herbert's still there, right? We created Frank. And find all users allows me to retrieve them all, right? So we're using Postman to go fetch this from the server, right? To generate these GET requests to that URL. Actually, I can generate it from here. I can retrieve from just here, right? I can just say that's a URL, goes out to the server, and it comes back the server response with the response of this array. So they're stored on the server. The server has a database, right? It fetches all this information and then it responds with all the users. To make it mine. Yeah. So the difference with you, right? With each one of you, what you're going to do is that you're going to be using a different. Instead of Janunzi, it would be your username. Yes. Not your social security number. Your phone number. Well, not your phone number. Maybe your NUID. Something that you can guarantee that is yours. Okay. So if I use somebody else's, right? XYZ, whatever, right? This will come back with an empty array. Yes, until somebody posts something in here, right? So let's post something. Let's do that. Let's go in here, and we're going to create a user, and here I'm going to use XYZ, XYZ, if somebody doesn't beat me to it. And so I can post. It comes back saying, yeah, successful. I was able to post something there. And if I go back and refresh this now, there's my Frank Herbert that I just created. You see that? Do you need to sign up for Postman? No, it's free. It's open source. You can download it, but you don't need Postman for the assignment. You might need it for trying it out and testing, see if it works, right? And it's a great tool to learn. Yeah. Yes.
Wait, so the state of this is just going to stay the same?
It will stay, yes, the same. Now the server does go to sleep when it hasn't been used for a while. Because it's free. It's a free version of Heroku. So if it doesn't work like the very first time, give it a minute so that it wakes up. Okay. And it should work once it wakes up.
So like okay. Basically guaranteed that if we just hard refresh, we'll get the same exact.
Yes, you'll get the same exact thing. Yes. Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. Yes.
Asynchronous request. Will the browser then, if the request fails, will it have like a retry mechanism?
No, it won't retry. Right. You'll get an exception. Right. Either some status information like timeout or not found, or you'll get an error from the server. And then your in your logic, you can then retry, right? Put like a timer or something that you can retry. It's not required to handle any error messages. We'll do error messages a little later when we actually implement these things. Right now, you're only a consumer of these APIs. All right. So did anybody? Okay. All right. So yeah. So let's use XYZ from now on. Since my Genunzi, somebody's been hijacking that. So yeah, so instead of Genunzi, we'll use XYZ. So if we do that and we refresh our page, if I refresh and we look at users, notice that we have somebody's posting there. Am I blushing? No? I meant to do that. All right, so we fetched all this information. This fetch returns a promise that allows me to register for a callback. All right, the callback, I can register it using the then function. Right, the then function allows me to register for the callback, saying, "Hey, call this function when it comes back, right? So let me know. So I can register and say, okay, here's my function. Here's the response using the new syntax response and the arrow function. And in here, I'm just going to do a console log the response. Right. So if we do a console, we go to our console. Where is it? Console. Notice that the console, what comes back from the server is really a whole bunch of meta information that the status is okay, a couple headers, the original URL that you were hitting. Also notice that the body is also there, right? The actual data is inside of the HTTP body that comes back from the server, right? That's where our array actually lives, okay? We need to parse that body and convert it into a JSON object, right? Back into some JavaScript that we can manipulate, right? So to do that, right, we're going to use instead of console.log, we're going to do a response.json, right? That call JSON on the response is going to parse out whatever the body contains, right? It's going to convert it into an actual JSON object. Yes, right? And this whole .json actually returns another promise. So this whole thing is going to return a promise. So we can do a then and see the actual users, and we can spit out the actual users, console log users. There's our users. There's 3 users. Another one in there. The 3 users are there. All right. Okay, so we don't really want to consume the users and just print them out, right, in the console like this, right? Instead, who needs to consume this array of users? The controller, right? The one who's calling this. So instead of putting this then here of users, I'm going to just return this whole thing. Return. I'm just going to return this whole thing, and the caller. Here's our caller. Where is it? There it is, right? This find all users is where I'm going to put my then right here. All right, here's my then. Here's my users. If I refresh, I now have, where are they? Wait, did it call? Find all users. Save. What? Did I miss something? Let's see. Users, return, yada, yada, yada. Then return, fetch, response. Yeah, that works. Response JSON. And using the main, find all users, then users. The users? Let's refresh. Okay, there's our array of all the users. Wait, why do I only have Bob now? Somebody's been deleting my users. Right, so now I have the array where I need it, right? I have it right here in the user service. So instead of just printing it out in the console, I could do what? I could do I can copy the list of users that is on the server and copy it into my local users, right? Copy it into my local users, and then I can call render users right here. I can call render users. I can refresh, and notice that now that Bob is really a Bob that lives on the server, right? So let's create a couple. Maybe you can create a couple yourselves. In Postman, we can create a couple more. Let's see, create users. We can create, so Dan, send, Alice, send, and Ed, send, right? And if we refresh this, right, we get Alice, Ed, Dan, and Bob. Does that make sense? Right, so this now the array in the remote server and the array in the local browser are in sync. Make sense? Right? Right. So that's the first thing that we need to implement, right? Being able to retrieve something from the server and update locally. Right. So let's play around with something else a little just a little more challenging, is maybe trying to remove one of these folks. Okay? Maybe remove Dan or Bob or any one of these. So let's add like a delete button and be able to remove one of these. All right, so let's take a look at that now.